Good morning and welcome to First Edition, the online ministry of First Community Church. My name is Glenn Miles. I'm the senior minister in this amazing congregation, and we are thrilled that you joined us on this day. As you know, this is Easter Sunday's broadcast. We had a marvelous time here at First Community at all the services, packed houses, amazing music, and more. Today I'm looking forward to sharing my sermon with you, and I hope you'll also hear two marvelous anthems from our chancel choir. In the sermon, we're going to consider the unbelievable, almost unbelievable, but amazing good news of the resurrection of Jesus. It's a powerful story, one that reminds us that hope is alive and that love has defeated death. Right now, there's a QR code on your screen. We'd love for you to register your attendance with us, to make a gift to the offering if you choose to, or even submit a prayer concern. We're really glad that you joined us, and we want you to remember that here at First Community, you are loved and accepted as you are. No matter what you believe or don't believe, you are accepted here in this place. Let's worship together.
I know that my Redeemer lives.
Hallelujah.
What comfort this sweet sentence gives.
Hallelujah. Shout on brilliant gaining ground. Glory, hallelujah. The dead's alive and the lost is found. Glory, hallelujah.
He lives triumphant from the grave. He lives eternally to save.
Shout on brilliant gaining ground. Glory, hallelujah. The dead's alive and the lost is found. Glory, hallelujah.
He lives, and while he lives I'll sing. He lives, my prophet, priest, and king. All glorious in the sky. Hallelujah. He lives exalted there on high.
Hallelujah. Shout,
pray on your gaining ground.
glory,
Hallelujah. The gates are wide, the lost is found.
glory, hallelujah.
And I hope. The sermon title today comes from a lyric in the old gospel hymn, "Come thou fount of every blessing, and I hope by thy good pleasure safely to arrive at home." Is there anything you want in this life greater than a place to be at home? Home is that place where you can be you, where you can leave the pretenses behind. You don't have to put on a false mask. You don't have to pretend somebody that you're not, being somebody that you're not. You can simply be the unique and marvelous person that God created you to be. Wherever that person is allowed to emerge, that's the place we call home. Oh, I know you may be wishing on this day, on this Easter day, for other wonderful things. Maybe you want a new house, a big, beautiful house where you can entertain 50 or 60 or 100 folks. Maybe you're dreaming of your 401k and your other investments just exploding with growth. And therefore you'll be able to retire early and build a home in the Bahamas and in the Rockies and in the West Coast and maybe in Europe. And maybe you're having all those kinds of dreams. Nothing wrong with those, but if you don't feel at home, what good are they? People were drawn to Jesus because in his presence, they felt like they were at home. They didn't need to keep a mask on. They could let go of the false pretenses. If they needed to be forgiven, they were. If they needed to be healed, they were. If they needed to be loved and accepted, he loved and accepted them as they are. With Jesus, they felt like they were at home. And then on Good Friday, all of that was shattered. Gone. His life was taken. The dream of a home was no more. Their hopes were ruined. What was it that Red said to his friend Andy in the Shawshank Redemption? Hope is a dangerous thing. Oh, those women, they didn't see the movie, of course, but they know the truth in that statement. Hope is a dangerous thing. They don't dare to hope. They don't dare to have any hope to even let a little kernel of it exist in their souls, only to be dashed again, only to be destroyed and ruined once again. No, on that Easter morning, they're on their way to the tomb with spices and ointments to anoint the body of their friend, the one they loved so dearly, whose life was cut short way too soon. They're not on their way to look for a miracle. They're not looking for Easter. They're just following the cultural practice of their day. And then when they arrive, they are frightened because the stone has been rolled away. They look inside the tomb and they notice that Jesus' body is gone. And then suddenly there are two men. Did you hear the reading that Sarah gave? Two men in dazzling clothes. Now, the Greek word for dazzling is astra. It means star. Do you hear astronomy in that word? That means they were dressed like movie stars. I'm pretty sure they were wearing really nice, well-tailored Armani suits with a gold tie, just perfectly coiffed. And what do the men say to her? To the women? Why do you look for the living among the dead? And suddenly they remembered. They remembered his teaching. They remembered his preaching. They remembered the promise that he made, that after the third day he would return again. They remembered, and suddenly in the act of remembering, they rediscovered Easter hope. They rediscovered Easter love. They rediscovered Easter faith. Their hope had been rekindled. What was it Andy, after he got out of the Shawshank, wrote to his friend Red from the beach? Hope is a good thing. Maybe hope is the best of things. They had found hope again. Their lives were renewed and restored. It was an amazing thing. Now, I can't prove this to you. I can't prove the resurrection. If you've come on this day for me to prove to you that the resurrection is real, that it truly happened, I'm not able. And even if I could prove it, at the end of the proof, what you would have would not be faith, but something entirely different. The Apostle Paul told the church in Corinth that faith is a gift. On this day, we cannot prove this great mystery of the resurrection. My friend Dick Wing, the former senior minister here at First Community, liked to say on Easter Sunday that something spooky happened. That's about as far as he or I will go on explaining it to you. Somebody asks you later today, something spooky happened. That's all we know. In fact, that's one of there are many mysteries in this life, are there not? Sometimes, in so many ways, the gift of love, the love for one another, is a mystery, and it's hard to explain. There are many great mysteries. A couple of years ago, Amy Bockham, who's a member of our church, she's a leader in our congregation, a fine leader in the community as well. She was in worship on Easter Sunday, sitting next to her daughter, Julia. During the sermon, her daughter, Julia, while I was preaching, asked her mom, "Can I raise my hand and ask Dr. Glenn a question?" She said, "No, I don't think so. It's not a good time." And she said, "But I'm curious, Julia, what's your question for Dr. Glenn? I want to know, is the Easter Bunny a boy or a girl?" Her mom said, "I'm certain you should not ask that question." And then she said, "I don't think Glenn knows, and I'm pretty sure no one knows." I agree with Amy. No one knows. It's one of those great mysteries. We can't explain it. It's impossible to explain. And who cares whether the Easter Bunny is a boy or girl or something in between? It's not a matter. It's a mystery. Leave it as it is. But I've seen what happens when Easter faith transforms a community. I've seen what happens when Easter love becomes real in the members of that community of faith. I've seen it. In fact, I saw it 2 Wednesdays ago. We were here, I think you heard earlier about the gathering. We were here at North Campus, but over in Grace Hall for our Wednesday evening fellowship event called The Gathering. Little dinner at 5:30, 5:45, a worship service. And then at 6, the young people are sent off to either their midweek activities or to their choir rehearsal. It was all choir rehearsal that night. And the adults stay in the room for Bible study. Sometimes we have poetry readings. Sometimes there are book clubs. Those opportunities are available. Well, earlier that day, my wife, Julie, had called and said, wouldn't it be great, as the kids are heading off to their choir rehearsal, if we could give them some Easter candy? I said, that's a great idea, yeah. And she said, well, I'm at the store, I'll pick some up. She came back with a box of Easter candies, little packages, individual packages about that big. We could write on the back, Happy Easter from Glenn and Julie. And so when that 6 o'clock hour came, at 6 o'clock, I stood at the hallway at the entrance to their choir rehearsal and gave every one of the young people a piece of Easter candy. Lori, the director of our children's choir, was thrilled that I'd given them candy. I went back into the Bible study. Mary Kate finished the Bible study. It was well done. Then afterwards, I went to find my wife to give her the candy so she could share it with the group she was meeting in. But before I could get to her, Celia, who's a member of our church, who I think is here this morning, she came up to me. She's about this tall, blonde hair, likes to dance during the music. She came up to me and she said, Dr. Glenn, my friends, I have two friends. There's two girls. Dr. Glenn, they didn't get any candy. And I want to make sure they get candy. Do you have any more candy? I said, I do. My wife has it, but I'll go get it. Where are your friends? She pointed and said, I think they're here. I'll go find them. You go find them, please. I went and got the candy. Had to wrestle it a little bit from Julie's arms, but I got the candy. I went back to where Celia was, and her two little friends came around the corner, about as tall, big, beautiful eyes. Both of them looked at me and said, Dr. Glenn, can we have some candy? I said, of course you can. I handed them to them, and they both said at the same time, thank you, Dr. Glenn. It was a sweet moment. My heart was just pounding at the beauty of somebody wanting to be sure her friends were taken care of. Not even 30 seconds later, another little boy came by, and he was holding his candy, and it was in the shape of a chick. And he said, Dr. Glenn, I got a chick. My candy's in the shape of a chick, but the one you gave me was in the shape of a lamb, and I didn't want a lamb candy. So I found my friend, and my friend, he had a candy in the shape of a lamb, and I said to him, a shape of a chick, and I said to him, I would really like to have a lamb. Do you know if there's any more? And my friend said, you can have mine. And I said, oh, is he a good friend? Yes. This little boy said, I'm sorry, I can't remember his name. Yes, he's my friend. Do you want to see Easter faith come alive? Join us on Wednesday night in the gathering, and keep your eyes on the children as they care for their friends, as they make sure everybody has what they need, and your Easter faith will blossom. Now, I know not everyone who's here today has that kind of faith. And even if you were to come on Wednesday, you might still say, well, that's nice, but my life's been hard. I had faith at one time, but my life and looking out at the world, it's hard to keep that faith alive. Some of you maybe have never had faith at all, but you're here today because you love the persons that have brought you. You respect someone who's invited you, and they've probably promised you a mimosa if you'll just come to church. I'm waiting for one myself, I understand. But what about that question from those men in dazzling clothes, the Armani suits? Why do you look for the living among the dead? Perhaps that's a question for all of us, those with great faith, those with none, and everyone else in between. Why do you look for the living among the dead? What in your life that are you still holding on to? What old hurt? What old anger? What old frustration or pain are you clinging to like it's some kind of a security blanket and you refuse to let go of, and therefore you're not living the life that you have waiting to blossom before you? It's T.S. Eliot who said, who is that on the other side of you? Who is that on the other side of you? We've been the last few weeks looking at these stories of Jesus as we're leading up to Easter through the lens of the life and actions of Peter. You heard in the reading, didn't you, that after the women reported back to the disciples and told them what they'd seen, they weren't believed. They didn't believe them at all. It's an unbelievable story except for Peter. Of course it's Peter. Peter runs, sprints to the empty tomb, looks in, and is amazed. Maybe all of us can learn from Peter. Do you remember that story in Matthew's gospel about the time the disciples are out on the Sea of Galilee in a boat? A storm comes up out of nowhere, and the next thing you know, they're being tossed to and fro. They're very frightened. They're huddling down in the boat, hoping against hope that they won't be swamped, when Peter looks up and he sees Jesus walking on the water. Of course, it's Peter who gets out of the boat and takes a few steps before he begins to sink. Now, the way Matthew tells the story is he says that Peter began to sink when he saw the storm. Literally in the Greek, it says when he saw the wind. That's when he lost his focus. That's when he began to fail. Now, of course, Jesus rescues him in the story. But Peter's failure is minor compared to that of the disciples who stay huddled in fear in the boat. John Ortberg, a great preacher, says, if you want to walk on water, you got to get out of the boat. And there's a great truth there in that simple statement. If you want to live your life, you've got to live it. I'm wondering today, for all of us, I'm wondering, is there some challenge, some new relationship, some new job, some new opportunity that you're afraid of walking into because you can see the wind? You can feel the storm, and it just feels too risky to take a chance. What about the one life you've been given? The gifts you have. Can you give those to the world? Can you take a chance and step up? I remember my son's last Little League baseball game. It was the summer before he started middle school. We had a really good team that year. I was coaching. Stephen was a great hitter. We'd made it all the way to the championship game. Stephen really was a good hitter. I'm not just his dad talking. He was the best hitter on our team that year. He could hit the ball hard all over the field. You might be wondering, if he's a good hitter, how was he in the field? I'll just tell you this. He was a really good hitter. Stephen, if you're watching, I'm sorry, but you know. Well, it's the 6th inning of the championship game. That's the last inning. We're down by 1 run. There's a runner on second, there's a runner on third. Stephen's at the plate. He had this little thing that he would do where he would take one hand and just kind of twirl the bat with one hand. It was really kind of cool. I don't know how he did it, but when I saw him doing that, I thought, oh, he's confident. He's feeling good. He's ready. He's in the right moment at the right time. First pitch is in the dirt. Second pitch is in the dirt. Ball 2. The catcher did a good job of blocking those pitches, keeping the runners on base. Next pitch comes in. It's a little bit outside, but Stephen goes with it, and he hits a line drive right down the right field line. It goes right in front of me where I'm coaching at first base, and it's foul by that much. That much. If it had been fair, 2 inches to the left, both runs would have scored easily. There's another pitch. He fouls off a couple more. There's another ball. Now the count is full. 3 balls, 2 strikes. Here's the pitch. It's a fastball. It's a little high, but Stephen likes those high pitches. He can see them better. He takes a huge swing. That's the sound of the ball hitting the catcher's mitt. Strike 3. The team goes nuts. They've won the championship. They jump on each other. Stephen drops his bat. I'm at first base. I start to walk toward him. I can already see the tears welling up in his eyes. I go up and put my arm around him, and I say nothing. Moms, dads, in those moments, just be quiet. We sat together on the bench in the dugout for 10 minutes, and I've got to tell you this. In that moment, I knew my boy would be okay. I knew he was willing to step up to the plate, to take a swing, to give his best. Did he fail then? Yes. Has he failed since then? Of course he has, just like his dad. But every time he's failed, he's dusted himself off, he's gotten up, he's learned whatever the lesson was, and he's moved forward in faith and, more importantly, in hope. What's happening in your life right now that's not occurring, that isn't happening because you're holding back, afraid to take a swing, afraid to fail, afraid not to quite measure up to whatever false ideal of success you might think you have? Are you ready to give yourself to the world in the name of love, the best of who you are? At the end of the Gospel of Luke, a few verses after the story that Sarah read, Jesus appears to the disciples. And they're afraid. That's a natural reaction. They'd seen what happened to him. They're filled with fear, and he says, don't be troubled. And then he instructs them, do you see my feet? Look at my hands. I imagine him asking them to come one by one and to rub their fingers across the scars, to feel his wounds. He's saying to them, yes, I gave my life to the world. I'm wounded and I'm scarred and I'm here on the other side alive. Friends, when we stand before God for the final time, at the end of time, God will say to you, did you give yourself to the world? You did? Show me your scars. Show me your wounds. Christ is risen. Christ is risen indeed, and hope is alive. And hope lives every time we give ourselves away in love. Amen.